Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Real Recovery Podcast, the AA Big Book Solution. My name's Natalie, and I'm here with my co-host, Michaelis.
What's up, guys? How are you?
And we've got a special guest today, Ellen from New York City.
What's up,
Hey,
Michelle?
how's everybody doing? Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you here today. So I'll just explain what we're doing here, and then we'll jump right in. So the purpose of our podcast is to share our experience, strength, and hope in our recovery, but not in the way that you traditionally hear that or think about that if you're a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. So in the normal context of experience, strength, and hope, it's what it was like in our drinking, what happened and how we got sober, and what life is like in our sobriety. So the twist on our podcast is this amazing big book study that we found that has created kind of the same kind of results. So we are sharing what life was like before we found the big book study, what happened and the experience of that process, of how it came to us, doing the process ourselves, and then what life has been like after finding this big book study. So, in the first couple episodes, Michaelis, he started out sharing his own experience, because this basically what we're doing here all started with him. And then I shared my story, and now we're having amazing guests on who are in the book themselves and taking other people through the process. So, Michaelis, you have anything to add about that?
No, I just want to say that Ellen is absolutely amazing. So yeah,
Awesome.
That's rad. So Ellen, how long have you been sober?
God willing, November 11th of this year, I'll have 9 years. So almost 9 years.
Awesome. Second time around.
Time.
And then the first time you had what? Go ahead.
14 years I went out, and I was out for probably a year and a half, 2 years, and now I'm back almost 9 years.
And then, so 14 years, what was that like? What was your experience like getting sober the first time?
So I did everything I was supposed to. I always joke that you, I was going to say, I always joke that you hear everything that you need to do the first 2 weeks of AA, and then just keep doing it over and over again, one day at a time. So the biggest thing I remember is just don't drink and go to meetings. That was like what I heard all the time. I'm going to tell you things that I heard, and now I think very differently about them. So step one, don't drink and go to meetings. That was huge. Only talk about alcoholism. What was the other one? I wish you a slow recovery.
I've never heard that one.
I have. Don't get too well too quick, right?
Oh my God, that was always, I wish you a slow recovery. And looking back, I was taking somebody through the book today, and last night we were just speaking about, something, the difference between before and after. And I said, when I was going into my second year of sobriety, I said, basically what I didn't understand, people kept saying, I wish you a slow recovery. And the sponsors that I had, and I loved every single sponsor I ever had, but they took their time with the steps. And here I am years later, and I realized that, how I always explain to non-alcoholics is, for me, AA, the difference was how I dealt with life. The only tools that I had to deal with life, or that I knew about, that I chose to use, were alcohol and drugs. And so now I get into this program where I can't use these tools to deal with life. And then people are telling me, I wish you a slow recovery, and doing the recovery really slowly. Like, I don't think I got to my fourth step until, almost the end of my second year.
Wow.
In my second year, Here's one story that will highlight everything. I was walking across the street in New York City. I had the walk sign, and I was with my friend, and a cab took the left and basically like almost hit me, like cut me off and almost hit me. And I didn't have the steps in my daily practice because I didn't get to them. I was on step, I don't even know where I was at that point, maybe 2 or 3. And so I ran up behind the cab. I ran up a hill, chased the cab who happened to be at a red light. And I banged on in the hood of his car. And I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with you? You almost fucking get. And I just went on like insane asylum. And my friend is down the end of the street watching me. And I walked back down the street after I had this huge tirade on this poor cab driver. And my friend just looked at me and went, you literally just chased a cab up a street, banged on the hood and started screaming at him. He's like, you were so lucky nobody was around. He's just like, you're insane. I was insane. So I tell people, I'm like, now I understand, like, once you read the book and you realize, like, I think Michaelis, you said Bill finished his 12th, or I think it was my friend Nadine or Michaelis said, Bill finished his 12th step in his hospital gown. Like right. Back in the day when they first found recovery, it was like, it wasn't like coddling and, oh, take your time. There were no fancy rehabs. It's like, you're dying, you got to do this. You would never have a cancer doctor say, listen, you have stage 4 cancer. Chemotherapy is the solution. Now, I don't want to force you into it. So you just decide, and you can take your time and decide if you're dying of cancer, you need chemotherapy now. Like, right. And that's how the alcoholics were back in the day. As we have evolved, I think that a lot of it, like most of us here, or we see for ourselves once we start doing the book, the message has been diluted, because we don't want to offend people. We don't want to push people. And it's like, like Michaelis said to me, back in the day, they didn't have that luxury. You are dying. This is your solution. You have 2 choices right now.
So I got a question for you. Like the first time that you were 14 years you said, right? Like correct. When you went through the steps, like how did your sponsors take you through the steps during those times? Like what was your experience with that? So
basically I read the step and then I would write out.
Where did you read the step?
What?
Where did you read the step? From what literature?
The 12 and 12.
Okay, so like for step 1, you'd read step 1, and then what would you do?
And then I would write down everything that was unmanageable and what I was powerless over.
Okay. All right. And then step 2, you'd read step 2 and you do other writing?
Write in what some of the insane things that I did.
Okay, cool. And then like you would meet with your sponsor after you finish your writing and you would read it to them and that would be it, right? And then all the way up until your inventory, you do an inventory, you'd read your inventory for your 5th step. And then what did you guys do for step 6 and 7? How was that explained to you?
It's been a long time, so I'm forgetting at this point. Basically, no, 6 and 7. I remember one of the sponsors because I've done them a couple of times. One of my sponsors was just like, okay, so are you willing to have these character defects removed? Okay, now pray to God and have, tell him you're willing to basically, I mean, it was a little more in depth than that, but basically that was the premise of, are you willing? Okay, now ask God to remove them as he sees fit.
Okay.
And cool. none of that happened.
Right? You're like waiting for it, but it doesn't.
I did everything and none of it happened. That's really cool. And that's what, when people, when I say I went out after 14 years, it's like the first thing I did when I came back in was I asked myself, what did you do or what did you not do that helped you out the door of AA? And one of the things I will say is, and this is a testament to the work that I'm doing now. There was a man in a meeting a long time ago that said, the man I used to be will always pick up a drink. And I thought that was the most brilliant line. But I didn't really feel it. Like I understood it, but I didn't really feel it. So I didn't really know it until I went out. And then when I came back into the program, and then when I started doing the work with Michaelis, I realized that this never changed. I got rid of the physical part of the physical part of the disease was gone because I wasn't picking up. Therefore, I did not have that allergy and that craving and that loop physically. But mentally and spiritually, I was not growing. I did a little, but not like I am now. Now it's not only has this changed, but even my chemistry, even my energy has changed. Does that mean I don't slip and act out sometimes? Absolutely. I would be lying if I said, oh, I'm perfect and I walk around like an angel nowadays. Absolutely. Right. But I don't do 90% of the things that I used to do when I was sober those 14 years, which is, for example, if somebody sent me a text that hurt me, my knee-jerk reaction, even in sobriety before, would be to lash out at them and text them back something that would hurt them even more than they just hurt me. Because that's the knee-jerk reaction. Somebody hurts me, I want to hurt them back. I want to hurt them back, not to hurt them. I want to hurt somebody so they realize what it feels like, what they just did to me, and they never do it again. And that's where I'm coming from. But as I have found out in my, life experience, once you hurt somebody, they hurt you back. You hurt it's just a volley. It just keeps going back and forth. There's never any resolve. Somebody texted me in December and it was very hurtful. And I knee-jerk started texting right back. I don't text like this, but I just thought I'd do that.
See, we have to post a video.
I know, right?
Yeah, as we can see, like
I texted like a mouse. I texted back furiously, like this text that was going to slaughter them. There was somebody else on the text that it would have hurt even more. And I went to press the send button, but because Michaelis and I have been doing this work, I always say there's 3 things that Michaelis said to me that has changed everything for me. One was, your sole purpose on this earth is to be a source of light to whoever or whatever is in front of you in the moment. The second thing is consistently start asking yourself, how can I be of service in this moment? Or how am I being of service in this moment? And the third thing he gave me was the paragraph that I love in my self-centered way. I think the most important thing is the way I feel. So there I was feverishly sending this text that was going to slaughter this person and hurt the other person on the text. My hand was almost at the send button, and immediately there was that question, how am I being of service in this moment? And of course I had to answer myself, I'm not.
Right.
All I would be doing right now is casting darkness by hurting somebody, hurting 2 people that were on the text. And so I erased the text. So that's where this comes in handy for me. If I knew this, if I had those questions, if I was asking myself those questions before, I would have never chased that cab driver up a hill and started screaming at him. So that's a big difference. Is the physical part of the allergy goes away in the first step. If I enter AA, I admit powerlessness and unmanageability. and I put the drink down and I go to meetings, that's awesome. And I said this to my sponsee last night. I said, you know, the more I think about it, step 1 gets you in the program. Step 12 keeps you in the program. And so doing this big book work, it's what keeps you in the program. And I said to my other sponsee tonight that I just did the book work with, even if you did nothing in life, because my biggest fear when I was sober was I'm going to die a loser. I'm going to die a loser. What I've learned is I could have no job. I could be doing absolutely nothing. But if I'm helping another alcoholic achieve sobriety, not only am I self-fulfilled, but I'm adding to this world. I'm adding to, like, you're not a loser ever just by doing this work. So you don't even have to do anything. You can just exist. But if you're doing this work, you're already ahead of the game.
Yeah, you're already winning. So I got a question. So you went out, you came back in, and then you had 7 years of doing step work, however you did it. So what was the difference between this book work versus all the step work that you've done before?
So for me, again, the older I get too, I like the facts. I like to know what the facts are. And I think what I loved about the book work is all the facts. And remember, I asked you, Michaelis, I'm like, where are you getting these facts from? Where are these stories coming from? Are these facts? Are you making them up? Are you pulling them out of a hat?
Of course I was making them up.
And when you gave me Lois's book and Bill Wilson, Not God, Joe and Charlie tapes, Evie Thatcher's book, when you were giving me all this, I was like, okay, I can work with this. And I think for this alcoholic, I'm not going to speak for other alcoholics, but I've heard other alcoholics say this, we need to have solid evidence, because, think about it. My disease is so strong. There's got to be a stronger solution to combat that disease, because this disease thinking is very strong. So you can't come up to me with some kind of fairy tale and tell me, oh, if you do this, this, and this, you need to prove to me, how is this going to work? And so when it's like Michaelis said to me the other day, a few weeks ago, if you remember, you said to me, the beauty about doing book work with people is it's not Ellen's story. It's not Ellen's facts. It's not, it's not, all you're doing is reading the facts from the people that actually came up with a recovery system when no doctor, even the most famous psychiatrist in the world, Dr. Carl Jung, couldn't come up with a recovery system.
Right.
Think about that. Every doctor that worked with alcoholics or addicts before 1934, 1935 had no solution. They shocked us. They put us in shock treatments. They put us in insane asylums. Some of us were dying on the streets or in jails. And, what did Dr. Silkworth say about Bill? He was a hopeless, of the hopeless variety. I did not expect anything to become of this guy,
Yeah. And the nice thing about it not being our message is that there's no pride involved. We don't have to control it or manage it. It's not,
absolutely,
not attached to it, in that way.
Right.
So.
Absolutely.
Well,
and
the
it's
other reason why that's important is because if we work with people who are new in recovery and asking them, hey, you can right away take people through this book. Oh, well, I only have a week sober. It doesn't matter. All you're doing is passing on this information. And that's a huge distinction from what we hear in meetings. That's so important.
Absolutely. And I've said that to a couple of people as well, because they have said oh, I don't have a lot of time. And I'm like, but you're not coming out with the solution. All you're doing is reading the solution you're reading basically those 88 pages, 164 pages are the facts about the disease that we have and the facts about the recovery. And I also point out, because Michaelis pointed out to me, and once again, when people are like, oh my God, thank you so much, you're helping me. You got to take that ego out and be like, no, I'm literally just passing on a message that Michaelis gave me, who Michaelis got from another guy, who got it from another guy. It's like, we're not geniuses. We're just passing on a message that of recovery that's working for us. So what was I going to say? With the book, I'm just like, it's not your message. It's the people that figured out this recovery system. And it's like, it's the facts, these are the facts. And isn't it good to know the facts of your disease and the facts of your recovery? Because if you had any other disease, if you had juvenile diabetes, if you had going back to the cancer again, or AIDS, if you have any other disease, multiple sclerosis or anything like that, you need to know the facts of the disease and the facts of the recovery if you want to deal with it and live,
Yeah, totally. So back to like the difference between the book work versus the other ways that you worked with the steps. Like what were the different messages you got doing the book work versus what you were told before, either in AA or, from other sponsors working the steps their way or whatever?
I mean, I think, and I'm going to say this, there are people that doing the steps that way, the original way, not the original way, but doing the steps the way they're done in regular AA. It works for some people, and some people don't want to do the book and they don't want to know the book. So to those people, I can't argue with them, because we're all alcoholics. We know better than anybody that we're not changing anybody's perception. We're not changing anybody's point of view. And, so I know that there are some people that what I say is, if they're happy, truly happy down deep inside, and their life is getting better and they're thriving, more power to you. For me, it wasn't working. And I really tried, but things weren't changing, with doing the book work. And I will say this, I'll be honest, when Michaelis first told me to work with others, I was kind of half-assing it at first. And
why?
Because I didn't want to ask somebody to do the work. I thought, I just thought, how am I going to approach somebody and say, do you want to do book work? They'll think like I've got some cult going on. So I didn't want to look like a weirdo. And so at first I just had a couple of friends that I was like, hey, would you just go through this book work? And they were two people that they were half-assing it too. So I will tell you, the first few months, I didn't really see a difference. And then one day, I don't know what it was. It was somebody on a meeting that just sounded so sad, like they had some stuff going on. And so I reached out to them and I said, listen, I'm doing this book work and it's actually, I feel a little better. Do you want to try it? And that was my first person. And then the next thing, it was like within weeks, I had 5 or 6 people. And I remember one day specifically, because it was during COVID and, it was like, we weren't leaving the houses. And I probably had like 4 sessions in a row. And before the 4th session started, I was like, oh, I'm going to be so exhausted. I'm going to be so tired. After the 4th session, I felt this energy that I never felt before. And I was like, oh my God, I feel so good. And that's when I realized, oh, this is what it does. It's like
crazy.
Yeah. And what's funny is that I just sent my my sponsor that I did we were doing the doctor's opinion. And I sent her this Tony Robbins video. It's 17 minutes long. And it's so funny because it just happened to come up on my YouTube channel. And I listened to it and I was cracking up because I said, here's a guy who's not one of us, but he said, do you want to be happy? Do you want to be successful and live a happy life and be self-fulfilled? Because that's what it's about. He's like, I know millionaires and billionaires that have everything externally, but they have no self-fulfillment and they're miserable. And he said, so do you want to be happy? Do you want to be self-fulfilled? Get out of yourself and go help somebody else. And I was like, where have I heard that message before?
Love it. I'd like to
And
stop you and ask you, just to kind of get a little more clarity on, you were sober this time for 7, 8, however many years before you found this big book study with Michaelis. So how were you like right before, in the months before, years before you guys hooked up, and how did you meet?
So around November of, it'll be 2 years ago, I believe. Yeah, because it was before COVID. So it's 2019, November 2019. Or it was December, one of those. I went to my physician for my yearly physical. And I was like, I think I need to get anxiety medication. And he's like, no, you don't need anxiety medication. And so I talked to, I forget who else I went to, but I had another doctor who is more of a holistic guy. And I'm like, I think I need like anxiety medication. He's like, he knows I'm sober. He's like, are you going to meetings? And I wasn't, I think I was going to one meeting every 3 weeks. And so I kept trying to get doctors to give me anxiety medication. And you know what I heard today? This woman on the meeting talked about going into surgery, and she always looked forward to getting knocked out, like the drugs to knock her out for surgery. She called it a free lapse instead of a relapse.
I've never heard that.
I know, me neither. But I said, but that's what I was looking for. Like, I was looking for a legal way to alter this, because this was still painful. That's what I didn't get. And so, every doctor who knew me knew that that wasn't what I needed. There are people that need medication. We are not doctors. So I'm not saying anything like that. But for this alcoholic, I was looking for the free lapse. Like a doctor to say, oh yes, honey, you're nervous. Here's some Xanax or whatever. So, here I am, it's during COVID, and there's an LA meeting, and Michaelis is the speaker, and never saw him in my entire life. And the thing that got me was, he said, I had 10 years. I had everything that you could want. On paper, I looked fabulous. I had the girlfriend, the money, the career, the whole works, but I wanted to kill myself. I was dying inside. And that just shook me. And then when he said, this gentleman came up to him and said, I'm going to take you through the book the way it was originally intended, that really got me. And I was nervous about, because Zoom was new, meetings were new, but I was just like so interested, which that doesn't happen to me often, to be taken like that. But I was so taken by it. I chat, on the chat, I was like, may I talk to you about the big book work? I was so afraid he was going to say, sorry, I'm too busy. Sorry. And he literally emailed me like right away. And I think we would on FaceTime within a couple of days, and so I told him about wanting to get on the medication, and how the doctors kept telling me I don't need it. And he's like, well, you know what? Before you explore that again, why don't you give this like 3 to 6 months? Just give it a shot. And then if you still think you need to do that, you can go back and try that again, and have them say no again. And so I said, okay. And literally we started working in March, and by August, September, I would not even think about going to my doctor and asking him for anything. Like like I said to you earlier, not only has this changed, but my energy has changed. There's a calmness to me. I'm not, and again, I have to say this again, because sometimes when I hear people that sound, like Mother Teresa or something, I'm like, oh, I'm never going to be like that. And it's like, no, I have my moments. Do I still yell every once in a while? Absolutely. Like, I'm human. I'm going to forget. I'm going to slip back into my old behaviors. I am human. But 90% of the time I'm not doing what I used to do. I catch myself immediately and I make amends immediately. You know, I would freak out at somebody or scream at somebody and, you know, not talk to them for 6 months and have all self-righteous resentments about it. And that's a huge difference. So like I said, going back to, you know, and you're asking me what were the months leading up to it, you know, the man I used to be will always pick up a drink. This thinking was the same. The thinking was the same. My thinking in my sobriety was exactly like my thinking when I was out there. The difference when I started doing the big book work is I started realizing the facts of my disease, like I said, and the facts of what the original pioneers of the program, what they did. You know, once I started seeing what they did and I started following suit. And the biggest thing I have to say is being of service. In Michaelis, I just read that I just had my sponsee write this down. How can I serve everything at every moment of every day? Now, as you see, I don't have anything in front of me. Do you see how I have most of the stuff memorized?
Yeah.
You know, because it's just like whenever Michaelis and I would meet, I would just drink it in, and I've never felt like this about anything else. And the beauty is, you know, there's people and Michaelis knows this, that have said stuff like, I don't do the book, you shouldn't be doing the book work with newcomers, and blah, blah, blah. And the beauty is, Michaelis last summer qualified for me, and somebody, you know, was against what he was saying. And he was like, well, that's, you know, that's their stuff. That has nothing to do with me. And I'm like, wow, I can't wait till I get to that place. And the beauty of doing this work again is you get to a place where you're like, I don't have to prove anything to you, because you can see it in my face. You can feel it in my aura, my energy. You can see my life is getting more successful. My relationships are getting more successful. I have sponsees. I didn't have, that's another thing. You know, what's the difference between the past 8 years and this past year? Almost a year and a half, I guess. Nobody was coming up to me to sponsor them. And when I first got sober, I had a lot of sponsees, and I just was that fun, energetic, you know, AA cheerleader. So I did have a lot of sponsees the first time around. But the funny thing with that as well was my sponsees were always doing better than me. Their lives were getting better. And what I didn't realize was I was that girl that could talk a good talk, but never walk the walk. So I would tell you what to do, but I wouldn't be doing it myself. Once again, the man I used to be will always pick up a drink. So this time around, it's like, I don't have to prove anything to anybody, because you can actually see it. And I think I'm taking like between 8 and 10 people through the book now. I have like 5 sponsees, you know, and people call me all the time. This wasn't happening a year and a half ago. So it's like the proof is in the pudding, you know. So I love the fact that I can be where Michaelis is, in the sense of when the doubters come and say something, it's like, well, you know, bless you, change me.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it goes back to what we were talking about. Yeah, it's like not our message. Like, if you don't like it, that's okay. It's not my message. It's in the book. I'm just passing that on. So I don't have that like emotional attachment to it where I have to be right. Like, I don't care. You know,
right.
It's what works for me. That's all.
And that's the biggest thing that I have to say, like, you know, it works. And that's why I am into this. And that's why I do this, is it's truly the first time that I can say I go to sleep without anxiety. I wake up without anxiety. I used to go to sleep always looping. What didn't I do? What do I have to do? And, you know, I always forgot that I have a threefold disease, so once again, I thought if I put down the drink and the drugs, everything else would even itself out. And that's not the way it worked. It was like I got rid of the physical part of the disease, but the mental and spiritual part of the disease, I was just stagnant. And I think that would be another testament to doing the book work is I started growing spiritually and mentally. That's the difference. So when I go to sleep at night, because I run my life in this certain way of how am I being the light at all times, I'm not doing things where I feel bad at night, so I can't sleep. When I wake up in the morning, I've already taken care of whatever I'm supposed to be taking care of, in life, my bills, working, showing up for things. So when I wake up, I'm waking up in joy and gratitude. I'm not waking up in fear and anger, which I did literally all the time. Like that was the norm for me. I would make a joke about, I would wake up and I did not even have one foot on the ground and I was already angry and I didn't even know why. I don't wake up like that anymore. Since last August, I think once I woke up for a second feeling anxiety. That's another thing that I started doing. Besides working with Michaelis, I noticed that this one morning I woke up at last August and I was just anxious. And I said, you really can't control the thoughts that are in your head as soon as you come into consciousness. But what I did, I don't even know where this came from. I just went, God first, everything else will follow. And I just felt so much better. I went, you know what? I'm going to train my brain to do that every day. So every single morning I started waking up and no matter what was in my head, I would go, stop, God first, everything else will follow. And now I added God and sobriety first, everything else will follow. That's my new thing. And I don't just do it in the morning. I do it whenever I need to, because there might be something in the middle of the day that comes up that can rock you. And I just go, stop, God and sobriety first, everything else will follow. And It's amazing how that's changed.
So like, have you, speaking of like experiences in sobriety where life happens and things like kind of rock you off kilter, have you had the experience of using service to treat that?
Absolutely. So back in the day, that's another difference, Natalie. And I'm glad we're coming up with this because it comes to the top of my head. Me before, out of sobriety, in sobriety the first time around, and in sobriety the second time around, up until Michaelis was teaching me this different way. Seriously, the being a source of light and asking myself those two questions. Before that, if I was going through a problem, if somebody from the program was calling me, even if it was a newcomer, I would literally pick up the phone and go, oh, I can't deal with them. I have to stay in here and take care of myself. I have to stay in here and take care of this problem. And that's exactly what I would do. And I would isolate totally, and I would be miserable. If I did pick up with the phone, I would make whoever was on the phone just as miserable as I was, because, we love company. Misery loves company.
There's this pressure in AA, especially like when newcomers are calling you, if you're not doing it this way, to like sound like you have it all together, because you want to keep up this like persona of like, I'm the teacher and I'm the sponsor and I need to like look like everything's cool, but that's not the case. You know what I mean? So yeah, totally. No. I get that. I wouldn't want to pick up the phone either before.
Right. So I never would pick up the phone. And now I immediately, not only do I do it, but I tell all my people to do it. I'm like, listen, you're going through something, pick up the phone, call somebody, ask them how they're doing, see what you can do for them, especially another alcoholic. Because I'll get people to say to me, well, I'm helping my mother. It's not the same. It's totally not the same. It's like, God bless, I'm glad you're helping your mother. I'm here with my father, but I still have to help another alcoholic. Because again, how do I know this? You go to the book, and Michaelis, remember what we wrote, what you had me write down? When these people figured out a recovery system, they said, how can we share this? Doctors, priests, or the book? And they decided to go with the book, which was genius, because we all know when you tell a story or you tell the facts to one person, by the time it gets to the 20th person, it's a totally different story. So they put these words, and they picked these words, and to use one of their words precisely, they precisely picked these words to put in this book for a reason. You know, they handcrafted every word. Like one of my people that I take through the book, she told me that her sponsor made her go through the book and circle the word must, to see how many times they say the word must. And as Michaelis said, must is not a suggestion. You must have a higher power. You must help another alcoholic. These aren't suggestions. And so, what was I going to say? So just going through that process of, you know, these are the facts, and, you know, this is all I'm passing along to somebody else, you know. Did I answer that incorrectly?
No, you're perfect. There's
all
no
good.
incorrectly.
Yeah.
Now, you got any questions?
Oh, well, I mean, I guess I would like to, in case this is anybody's first time listening to this episode, if you're jumping in now, you might be unclear as to like what specifically we're talking about here. So how does, I'll just ask Ellen to explain, what specifically are we doing? You know, we talk about book work, like what does that mean? And how is it different than it was before, like working with others? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So absolutely. So all the years that I've been in AA, like I said, they have big book meetings. You know, I've had people say, let's do big book, but it was never as one-on-one. It was never as, I don't want to use the word intense because that's not correct, but in depth. It's never been as in depth, and to do it one-on-one with somebody and actually have a conversation. Also reminding, you know, and one thing I didn't say, we're doing the steps through the big book. So, you know, as I do with my people, Michaelis did with me, asking me questions, you know. So for instance, Bill Wilson's story, one of my sponsees joked, she's a 26-year-old gay woman. And she said, you know, I was like, what am I going to have in common with this old white dude from 1934, you know? And she's like, but when you start asking all these questions, because in Bill's story, we have to, you know, write down any phrase or sentence that resonates with us or we can relate to, and then write our experience. And so she was like, I couldn't believe how much in common I had with this old white dude. And I was like cracking up, and I said, I felt the same way. So going through the book one-on-one, getting some of the facts that you don't get when you go to a meeting. And again, when you go to meetings, you have to remember, we're a bunch of alcoholics. All of us are showing up with our own set of baggage, our own set of issues, our own set of personal experiences, which sets up our perceptions and our points of view and our opinions. And so when you're in a meeting and you're new, you don't know who, you know, what opinion you get. I mean, I just remember not only me, but hearing some of my sponsees or people with less time say, some guy said this to me in the meeting. And I remember being in the meeting and I shared something and somebody cross-talked and said, well, you should be going to your sponsor with that. You should not be sharing that. I almost never went back to a meeting after that. I mean, they yelled at me in the meeting in front of everybody. And I was fresh. I was new. And it's like, I don't know about any other alcoholics listening to this podcast, but I was highly defensive. You know, for anybody telling me I'm doing something wrong or, I just had such self-loathing and low self-esteem, and I was so defensive. I mean, when somebody spews their opinion that might not necessarily be a fact of AA, that could damage a newcomer, So again, the beauty of the book is it's like, these are the godfathers and the godmothers of this movement, where there was no, and I say this over and over again, but there was no recovery. And these people figured out a recovery system. They figured out not only how to survive from alcoholism, but to thrive. And that's, I think that, Natalie, if you wanted me, long story short, long story short, in my sobriety before, I was just surviving. My sobriety, doing the big book, I'm thriving. You can cut and edit the rest of this whole fucking thing out. If you want to know, if you have any newcomers or anybody new to this podcast, that in a nutshell, without all the other bullshit, what I would say to you is doing the work for this alcoholic. And again, there might be somebody else that says, well, the other way works for me. If it does, God bless you. Obviously, it didn't work for me because I went out the first time and I was trying to go out the second time. And when I finally got into this book work, not only am I surviving from this disease, I'm thriving. That's the difference.
That's awesome.
There you go. We should just edit the whole thing.
No, it's perfect.
No, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I think it's a great place to stop. I mean, there's nothing, unless you have something else, Michaelis.
No, I thought this was awesome. It's just good to see you, Ellen. You're rad.
You too. Yay!
To work with you. It's great. So
I know.
Great.
I know. I'm like so excited. Yeah, it's good. I know. What was I going to say? Yeah, it's amazing. Like one of my, are we off camera now?
No.
Oh.
Yeah. So.
Well, it doesn't matter. One of the people I'm doing work with, I've literally been her sponsor probably like 5 different times in her sobriety, and she's had a tough go of it. And it's funny, the first time she ever asked me to sponsor her, she said to me, and she's got all the trappings, she has all the externals, and she said to me, you have nothing that I want, but you have everything that I need. And I thought that was brilliant because, I was like literally, living hand to mouth, and she lives on Park Ave. Mm-hmm. And so that was the first time that we met, but it never stuck with her either. So she kept going in and out. And so this time around, probably 2 months ago, she just started coming back into my life more consistently. She's always been in my life, but it's not been consistent. And then I basically said, you know what, why don't I just become your sponsor again? So I said, but you have to do it the way I'm doing it this time around. She's like, well, you seem like a totally different person, so I do want to do it with you. And last night, today we did the big book work, but last night we spoke, and she said, it's I have hope. She said, for the first time in my life, I feel like I have hope in this program. Like I feel so different now doing the work with you. And so to hear somebody that, has been having a hard time since like 1999 say she finally has hope because of this big book work. That's amazing.
So awesome. Yeah, that's really cool.
Thank you so much.
I have somebody, like I said, the 26-year-old, she has 4 months now. She just had 3 months. She loves it. I mean, she was so excited that we got into the doctor's opinion tonight, because I'm like, step 1, powerlessness, here we go. But it's like, it's funny because, all these people, we go to the same meetings and you hear them on the meetings, and they're very solution oriented, whereas that if you wanted to edit and add one more thing in there, that's the difference too, is when in the book, I'm more solution oriented. When I wasn't in the book, it was, sitting in the problem and sitting in the self-pity and sitting in the depression and sitting, and I just sat there for so long, and I don't have time to sit in that stuff anymore. Now it's like, okay, we know what the problem is. Let's go help somebody else. And Michaelis, one thing that you said to me that I pass on to everybody, COVID, Michaelis and I are both in the entertainment business as well, and we have jobs that we're not getting booked because of COVID. And I asked Michaelis, aren't you worried? And he's like, no. He's like, I just keep showing up and doing the book work and keep being of service. And, I have it in my book, put the 12-step work first while the universe is taking care of me. I'm going to cry right now. And it always is. And it's like, my life has totally changed. I live in abundance. I live in gratitude. I live in joy. And that's because I'm doing this work. And I can't even say enough about it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's true. Well, thank you both.
Thank you so much for coming and showing up and just sharing all of this just juicy, wonderful information, experience, strength, and definitely hope. So
thank you.
We will go ahead and end the podcast. We can stay on after for a minute and say goodbye. But for those of you listening, thank you so much for joining us today. Our special guest, Ellen, sharing her amazing story, and Michaelis, as always. So please tune in next time, for we will have another wonderful guest to share this message. And, the purpose of this is to show people that may be floundering in the program or not, but just that there is a solution that works, and we can duplicate it. It's over and over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you are struggling, if you're listening to this, please reach out. You can find us on the internet, and we're happy to help. So until next time, everybody have a wonderful day.
See you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.